are on silent. And even take the vibrate out so we don't get the zzz, zzz, zzz. Anyway, we have the CE sign up at the back if you need those. And anyway, and Cory says he'll have some time for questions afterwards, so hold them to the end. And yeah, I just want to introduce Cory Miller, and he's going to share us his passion, his purpose of adding biology to the farm, kind of homegrown. So turn it over to you, Cory.
Thank you, guys. It was weird. I left Montana yesterday, and I thought I was going south. It's actually colder here than it is at home. So what I'm going to do, we're going to go on a little journey today through really the last 4 years of heavy biological applications at my place, and then what that's kind of turned into. So there's going to be data involved, a lot of photos, different crops we've done, some production. And on top of that, I know there's going to be some questions. And I'm going to ask you guys questions. I want you to participate. So if you're looking at the ceiling, you're going to get asked a question. And that's just because I want to talk to you. Hopefully you're going to learn something today. So quickly, just introduce you to my place. Anybody familiar with Missoula? My land is basically everything south of the runway. We're the only contiguous piece of farmland that's still in the city limits, and we're surrounded by houses. So I have, you guys look, typically farming out here, you have 2 or 3 neighbors. I got about 840, and every one of them tell me how to operate. And they definitely let me know when my cattle are out. One benefit of being next to the airport is that they have a big tower that sits way high, and they know where my cattle are too, so they call and let us know if something's out. We own 700 acres of land. I think something that's important for the context is the rainfall we get. We're 15 inches of annual precip. Now, we are all irrigated. We're fed by a ditch, and very lucky to have a very large pressurized aquifer right underneath our ranch. It's actually, our elevation changes about 6 to 8 inches throughout the course of a year as that fills up. So above us is a ski area. All that snow goes underground and ends up right underneath my place. So in the springtime, we're a little bit higher. The fall, when we take all the water, we drop. We do a lot of different things. And a lot of different enterprises have grown really exponentially in the last couple of years, but primarily we're beef, hogs, chickens, sheep, pheasants. We grow, historically, it's been a hay production business. I think this year is the year that we're going to sell all the hay equipment. Poor timing because interest rates are high and people are probably not going to buy it, but decided it's time to make that cut. We also have a little sod farm. We grow about 60 acres of sod. And we figured that was the sacrifice land that we were going to use to fund the rest of these projects. So we sell sod to all the subdivisions next to us. We make compost not only for us, but primarily for the subdivisions around us too. People are conscious, and we think that if we can start at their home ground and convince them that biological is the way to go, that then we can start selling them more of our products that we're producing that way. So everybody cares about how much you produce. When we started in 21, we were a little over 1,000 tons. This past year, we put up over 2,000 tons of hay. A lot of that's been because we're now using it on our land and we're not exporting it. Some of our beef and hogs, so that's my daughter, grand champion our local fair. That was a big deal, especially for, I have 4 daughters, so I have to get them involved somehow. They don't want to be out in the fields with us, but they love pigs. We just farrowed this past weekend, 22 babies, and my wife, I don't think, has slept since last Thursday. And you guys gotta have a picture of a good steak. So our sod production, like I said, 56 acres. In 23, we did about 650,000 square feet. And last year, just under 1 million. Grass I thought was easy to grow, we found it's incredibly difficult. And I'll tell you why. This past summer we had a white grub infestation. Anybody know what they do to your sod? They turn it yellow, and quickly. Like it took us, when I first noticed this, it was probably over the course of a week. We had just fertilized or had composted, added a little urea, and then the expectation was everything was going to be green right away. That's not at all what happened. Everything started to turn yellow and it was patchy. And I didn't know what it was other than we had some signs. So if you have grubs, what are you most likely going to bring into your land? Any ideas? Yeah, there's other wildlife that wants to eat them, correct? So the first thing I saw was all of a sudden a vole problem, right? So we had these little little small mounds of dirt, or what we call pocket gophers, kind of coming up in these really small confined areas, let's say like a 10-foot circle. And the next day, 15-foot circle. Next day, 20-foot circle. So, and the problem with killing these is you have to kill them in the larval stage. So when they get big, like the picture on the right, which was on a piece of sod that I just cut, they're difficult to kill at that point. So what's our options? Right, we can put some chemical on them. But we made a decision when I started the place that we weren't going to do any pesticides. So what we did, we grow pheasants. And pheasants need high protein, especially in this time of the year. Grubs only at 12.5%, but they have a lot of fat too. So we started running pheasant, we took chicken tractors that we had, filled it full of pheasants, and put them directly over where we saw the vole activity. They were very happy. They cleaned that area. So we were able to eradicate that white grub problem in about 10 days. So we took the benefit. Now, last year when I put them out there, we put, I would say, I think our pens were 50 by 25. And we had 1,000 pheasants in each one. That was way too much. So this year, we're actually going to go through our sod in the spring, and we're going to do it with just 100 birds and methodically use it for our fertilization application. My point is with this is that it doesn't really matter what you do. The key is the observations, right? If I would have been, there's always throw the aphrodisiac at it. I could have treated for white grub. And I guess some more context. My next door neighbor is a really high-end golf course. So all of their runoff ends up in my ditch, just ahead of my irrigation takeouts. And a lot of chemicals are coming down that ditch from runoff from that golf course. So where do we think the white grubs came from? Well, it's obvious they came from the golf course. So we just need to put some practices in place that will start to prevent that from proliferating. So now we have a second use for our pheasants, and it saved us $2,500 in chemical. We've all been at this place, right? We're going to make the decision to go this direction. And we have, whether it's a family operation or a banker telling you, they want to make the decision for you. And what do you do every spring? You get your soil tests, and from that you get an estimate on what fertilizer is going to be. So this is what happened to me in 21. And of course, our first bill or potential bill was $84,000. We all know what was happening in 21, 22. Fertilizer was high. I decided that there's got to be a different way to do it. And of course, we all go to YouTube University and read books and talk to friends. And you guys are lucky. You have a community. We don't have this kind of community in Montana, right? We talk about how we're being beneficial, but nothing on scale. There's the guy that has the 2 goats in the petting zoo, and they're running the market garden and making compost, but they don't have anybody that's doing, I would even say 100, 150 acres. It's just not something that we have there. So I had to go searching. But I did make a decision that year that we weren't going to put any NP and K, or at least synthetic fertilizer, down on my fields. And at the time, the banker told me I was crazy. My whole family told me I was crazy. And really, it was a blessing in disguise. So in 21, I made one of my first mistakes in compost, which was also somewhat of a blessing. Anybody have municipal compost facilities near you? Do you? For us, it was a big benefit. The city facility was only in 1.5 miles from my land. So when you're moving compost, your big costs are in transportation. We could buy this stuff at $1 a ton, right? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about what's in it in a second. So as you can see, we bought first year in 21, 3,500 tons and spread that. What we didn't know is how heavy we were in PFAS and these forever chemicals. And so I want to caution you guys on that. They're everywhere. Problem with Missoula, our dump sits up above the city. Okay, so everything's taken to the dump. There's a pipeline directly from the dump to the sewer treatment facility where they segregate PFAS. Do you guys know where these chemicals accumulate? They accumulate in the solids, okay, and they are hydrophobic. So if you take a bunch of this stuff and put it out on your land, and then you turn your irrigation on, what happens? It defeats the purpose. It's exactly what we're trying not to do. It's pushing our water off our land, okay? So we did that mistake 1 year. The good thing is we didn't hurt anything. But what I did do is I learned that we have a lot of this carbon and we can make it all ourselves. And so we've now upped our livestock enterprises to produce our own nitrogen. These 22, 23, 24, these are all stuff that we're making now on farm. Those numbers are pretty big. I mean, has anybody had the ability to put 8.5 tons of compost on their land? It's a lot. But I'll tell you why we do it in a second. Here's the process. So in these tons of municipal compost, 32 pounds of nitrogen per ton. Okay, if we're putting down 8, do the math, that's a lot. Quality's not that great. But the thing I want to show you is it's lots of carbon. And we actually heard this morning that, yeah, carbon is good on your land, but you need the biology and everything else to turn into soil organic matter. That comes in compost, right? We also need roots to continue the feeding process and the cycling. But it's very important that we have both, okay? So this is a picture that I took in 2022. This is my truck, and really not even for this purpose. This was just for a little short video we were doing. Can you guys see anything in there that looks out of place? Besides the truck. Yeah, so you see I've highlighted these. These are some areas what I would call of density. What's really crazy about how this started is, there we go. So you see this road, right? And then over here you see this ditch line where we dug in an underground water line. As that truck was driving by, it would hit the bump in the road and shoot out extra compost. Okay? Same thing when we were going this way, going around the circle this direction, same thing happened. Guess what? Same thing. Same thing. Really, when we start this process, we don't know how much we need or how much it's going to be beneficial. But we observe. And so this was taken for some other purpose. I was looking through pictures and I'm like, oh my God, what is that? Well, now we use drones to do the same thing, but it will tell us where our density is. So we know how much we're putting on and we know where our benefits are. Right? And it was just because of this picture that I doubled our application the following year. It makes sense if you can make it cheap. So what's in our soil? This is the digestible solids test from 21. 5,100 pounds of N, 1,000 pounds of P, 4,000 pounds of potassium. Can we grow a crop with this in our soil? If it's available, right? Well, how do we get it available? We use biology. So we're going to talk about that. Testing, I think, is really important. I think understanding the test is more important. And we do a lot of PLFAs, and now NLFA testing. And we're lucky if anybody's seen the Biggest Little Farm movie. The company that funds that actually has a ranch just down the street from us. And so we do a lot of work. They employ 4 PhD researchers. And so we've gotten to do a lot of practice with them and seeing. And so they're doing active testing on our place really year round now. And so we get a lot of data. A couple of things I want to highlight. Our fungal to bacteria ratio, in my opinion, is low for what I'm trying to do. And our pH is high. Right? That's all this test tells us. The other thing it tells me is we have 0 protozoa. I thought at the time that that was the truth. All right, and that was where the problem was with testing. I put my focus in the protozoa rather than actually going out and looking at my soil and seeing that we have active protozoa everywhere. This is a picture of a testate amoeba. Around it, you can see lots of bacteria. Inside of it, what do you guys think these circles are right here? Are those just bigger bacteria? Somebody said something? Babies, right? If they have a lot to eat, what do animals do? They reproduce. It's the craziest thing. Just like people, if they're fat and happy, they're having kids. Biology is the exact same thing. This is what I would call, talking to hunters, this is a Boone and Crockett testate amoeba. It's got 9, cells that it's getting ready to separate and make new testate amoeba. That happens because it's happy and healthy. This was actually taken a few days after I took that soil sample too. I didn't know any of this. Okay, anybody know what this is? Nematode? Can anybody tell me what kind it is? Good guess. No. This is a predatory nematode. Predatory nematodes really clean up the mess that the other nematodes leave. You can tell on this particular one, it's hard to see, but this little dark line, that's a tooth. That's what holds it in its mouth so it can eat it. I saw that in a soil sample I took 2 summers ago, and I was jumping up and down excited. It tells you 2 things. Well, potentially 2 things. One, you have root feeders. If you have root feeding nematodes, you have problems. The other thing it tells you is you have an excess of bacterial feeders. So it's the cycle, right? They start to manage the population themselves. Okay, and then of course the other biology you always want to see is lots of earthworms. The soil, we were actually looking for a different purpose. We were looking for nodules on some peas, and broke this open, found 13 worms just in this little piece. And my thumbs aren't that big. That to me was a big deal. A lot of people don't understand the process and that you can change an ecosystem, right? We talked about today what happens when it's so degraded. Where does it go? It goes to a desert. This graph I really like because it's super simple. We've got a yellow line in the middle, okay? It signifies a few things. One, pH. Anything this way, of course, is going to be less than 7. Anything this way is going to be higher, right? The other thing it tells you is if your soils are more bacterial or more fungal, okay? Where we have trees, we need more fungal. Okay, we operate, like I just showed you the picture of what our testing showed at a 0.2 to 1. So it would put me somewhere over here in about a 7.8. Well, if I look up, what can I grow? Early successional grasses. We have a lot of swamps and some brassicas. Is that conducive to farming? Well, potentially, but not very productive. The other thing I want to highlight is the production per acre in those different ecosystems. Right? If we're operating, sorry, I'm terrible at the aim on this thing. 0.4 tons an acre, or if we're trying to get our grown biomass as much as possible, 9.5 tons an acre. So Amazon rainforest, Western Montana. Where do you fit? Do you really know what your soil looks like? And this is not just NP and K availability, but this is pH, this is what is our microbial activity. Do we have everything? Are they present? Are we feeding them? Okay, this is a test from this year. Anybody here grow spring wheat? Good, you guys can educate me. Does this look good? So this is a profile shot taken through, and this is at what I would call advanced tillering. And then on the right side, looking down, we see a couple things in there that are bad. One, lots of soil. And when a plant's this tall, should we be seeing soil? Right? We have one purpose, and that is to mine as much solar energy as we possibly can. Who is getting more in this picture? Is it my plant or is it the soil? Let's say maybe 50-50, right? The soil's fairly exposed. What about here? You guys see some things in there, right? What's that? That's non-native, right? That's a weed. What about down here? That's a weed. Looking through this, we don't see much. This is just a test, and this is, I think, total size of where these photos are taken, side by side, is no bigger than this table. Heavy compost, meaning 8 ton an acre, as opposed to none. Okay, that's the difference. How much solar am I harvesting there compared to right next door? It's a big deal. This is where these increases come from. Okay, side by side. Bad, good, bad, good. Do you guys think that'll cause an increase in the amount of heads that we set? The wheat guys, it will, right? Do you think that that will benefit the nutrient that's available in that seed? Are we going to hold more nitrogen? Or are we going to produce more nitrogen that's going to be in that seed? Obviously. The other thing that we're feeding is biology. Are these a good guy or a bad guy? They're good guys, right? Do we want them? Do they tell us of other problems? You know, it's the craziest thing. So when I did this test, of course you can see it's fairly moist. It's after a rain, it's early in the morning. We see some things in this picture that explain to us why it's working. You guys see these chunks? It's obvious this is just straight compost, right? Okay, we see one ladybug, and it's hard to see, but there's another one behind it. Okay, we do have open soil. We see a lot of aggregation, right? Big chunks of soil. Okay, but if you zoom now, my hand's not that big. There are 7 different ladybugs in here. I know there's one here. There was one there. There's one hiding right here. Throughout. When I went just this far away, 2 feet away, no, couldn't find the ladybug. Right? So do you think that it's what's the food source that they're after? Anybody have any ideas? It could be. What are they doing? They're cleaning up this compost, right? And that's the assumption here. They're coming in to take aphids. That's their job. But what it told me is that by putting this there, we gave them a place to live. They had to go out and find their own food. All right? They love this environment. And this happened all over the farm. Wherever we put heavy compost, we had tons of ladybugs. Everybody here do a Haney test? Does everybody understand how it works? Is everybody 100% confident? Right, I'm still confused. But the reason I use it is because the numbers don't lie, and it gives you a baseline of improvement. All right, so I religiously do this every year, and we have changed some things. These are the highlights, okay? So 6% soil organic matter in 21, 24 we're up to 7.6. Okay, that's 1.6%, that's a lot. Okay, the other thing that we see is our pH has dropped to full point. over those 4 years, and our electrical conductivity has increased almost a full point. If you saw this on yours, would you be excited? Maybe, but maybe we still don't know what the test is telling us, right? Maybe we're still confused. To me, this is good. I use this to gauge what we did the previous year. As you can see, there's some big changes, right? A big pH drop from 21 to 22. After that, we're not going down as fast. Well, what did we do there? We played around with some gypsum, played around with some other things to get our soil in a condition that was where we thought was right. pH dropped, but soil organic matter, why did we have such a big drop between, what I would call, I think anything over 0.5% is a big deal, between 22 and 23? Biology. Okay, that's the answer. So that's what now we're mimicking. And if I can meet those goals every year, then I'm going to be happy. PLFA tests, I think, are another test that's not fully understood, and I don't know if everybody actually does it right. But in 2022, we had some protozoa show up in the testing, and to me, that was kind of a big deal. Like, right now they figured it out, now they can really tell us what we have. And these are evolving tests, right? We're getting better and better at them as we go. But what was really important to me is the fungal to bacteria ratio. Like, we were now making a dent, and we were getting more fungal in our soil. All right, 2023 data, and this is my favorite, and it's because it's the first time that we actually compared it to native. All right, I heard that today. How do you tell if you're being a good farmer? Are you better than the unbroken soil next to you, or are you worse? And I think that's a really good way to look at it. This is a data sample. CM, of course, is me. 50 is the name of a field that we have. The PVL is just pivot, but these are mine too. This CB down below is another farmer. Okay, this is soil. He's next door to me. So why is our bacterial biomass and fungal biomass 2, 3, 4 times what his is? 5, 6 times. We're right next door. We have the exact same soil. Okay, this native is native unbroken land next to the 50. I'll show you a picture of it here in a little bit. But look at those numbers. Okay, we have a fungal to bacterial biomass of 1.9, 1.8, 1.8. Pretty consistent. Our farmed ground, okay, staying somewhat close. This 5.4 up here I think is an anomaly. But in general terms, we're staying close. Now our soil organic matter, and you guys can see these better than me, but we're at or better in all of our farm ground. Everybody in here, your ground has been tilled at some point, right? And I hope you've made the decision to not do it anymore. Sometimes there's limited tillage that's beneficial, but not do it anymore. Luckily, Montana's not a big farming community, right? We don't grow corn and beans. We have a lot of cattle. We grow a lot of hay. We're in perennial pastures, so we're not doing a whole lot of tillage. This land has been really maintained in a good way. I mean, there's been people that have owned it that have made mistakes and tilled and done other things, but for the most part, this land has been able to continue to do its purpose. And that purpose is grow a crop, put whatever it can back into that soil to feed itself. Right? A lot like prairies, or call it almost like Yellowstone, which, have you been to Yellowstone lately? I could get really excited about that, but terrible management. I've never seen anything so overgrazed in my life. We were there this fall. No wonder the bears are starving. We use a Bio 5 extractor trailer. So I had this, it was a design put together by them 4 years ago. Bought this, and then we did some changes to it. One of those is we moved the side input of the liquid towards the center so we can actually wash compost out rather than try to get water in to where we're taking biology. One of the hard parts about once you start making these products is how to efficiently get it into the field. We use this agar inject pump for a lot of different reasons, but for the biggest part, we're going to be irrigating anyway. It allows me to get biology into the field. Now, I will tell you, if you're going to spend money to do something to go biological on your farm, I wouldn't start here. Okay, this is something we were using anyway to inject fertilizer. This allows us to get biology out. I wouldn't go buy it. I think there's better ways. Okay, an aerator. Anybody aerate soil around here? Or you have such good soil you don't need to? We use this because we're in perennial pastures, right? How do we get biology in and penetrate into this if we're trying to add something? This was something I put together with a buddy of mine in the farm shop over a course of like an hour, and really was one of the better things we've done aside from coating seed. We could poke a hole in the ground, we could fill it full of a biological extract into a place where this biology had a food source, and that food source could be used to grow. In testing and DNA testing, we're finding that the stuff we're putting down is actually continuing to be around 30, 60, and up to a year later. I can't do that in my pivoted fields. We just don't see it. The survival rate's too low. Okay, drill. Everybody has done this, and I'm assuming a lot of you guys that are no-tilling, you have a way to inject something on your drills. Is that right? Good assumption. This system, we use 275-gallon totes. We throw our liquid on the front side of the loader on the tractor, and then I can just quickly change out. So go and grab one. We don't do the big acreage like you guys. If I'm seeding, it's maybe 50 to 100 acres at a time. But I can get through it quickly by just switching out. We don't have the big setups. I planted corn this year with that thing. Quite impressive. Whole goal was to make a corn maze, and corn did really good. It was actually better than I thought it would be, so we actually cut it for feed. And we're feeding 200 cows on corn silage that I would have never thought I would ever make in Montana, but we did. Inoculant. If there's one thing that you leave from here, from me today, I think this is it. One of the benefits of all of these extracts that people are making is their ability to help an establishment of the seed. And in everything that we do, and in all of the experiments that I've done myself and then read and talked to other people, this is cheap to do, right? If you don't have a concrete mixer, you have some way that you're able to turn some seed, and you have some way that you're able to apply a liquid to that seed. I have had our best luck by this process. This is a random picture. This is not ours. But this is one that is simple to use. Concrete mixer, whether you're powering it by hand or plugging it in. Of course, you're not going to treat a whole bunch at one time, but it's good. If you have a roller tumbler or anything else, fantastic. We now have one, and so we're treating a lot more of our seed, and it's a lot quicker, right? All this stuff as you're starting out takes a lot of labor to build these systems and actually use. But as you grow, you can find efficiencies, right? And usually it's somebody else's mistake. You can acquire some equipment to use. Ours was an old roller the neighbor had, and I don't know how he did it. Like, we don't have rocks, it's all clay. And somehow he hit a rock and completely destroyed this roller. And so he went and bought a new one, and he gave me that one to use. So we just throw our seed in it, and it still kind of rolls. So we use that to coat seed. Another tool is bale grazing. Anybody around here done that? Yes? I love it. This is exciting. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up? Average? I may be able to help you with what we're going to talk about. So this is the airport. You can see the airport tower in the right corner where they are. And this is what I would call what I thought was our worst land. Missoula, hydrographically or hydrologically, This land was the bottom of a lake. So we had what was called Glacial Lake Missoula. We had a big ice dam, filled up 48 times over the course of about 6,000 years. And when it did that, think about what happens in the bottom of a lake. All the sediment from the runoff shows up. You get a nice little layer. And then through the growing season, green things are growing in this water. And as it goes to freeze, they all settle out in the fall. As you go through this process over and over, this soil is actually incredibly compacted. You know, it had 1,000 feet of water above it. So a lot of weight down on the soil. But it also has a pile of organic matter. And so did a little experiment with a ripper. A buddy of mine had a big dozer, and he was doing some airport work. So I said, hey, can you drive it over here and just see what happens? And so we put a one-tooth ripper on the back of this dozer and just did a 4-foot rip. And then threw some cord seed on top of it to see what would happen. And it was actually pretty impressive. The carbon load in this soil is really high, and it's all trapped about 2 to 3 inches below the soil. We can't get plant roots into it. And we found some bale grazing techniques kind of helped with that. It broke the soil because we're in a really wet winter, and you can see in this picture, like this brown spot, this land looks destroyed. Okay? And of course, trails everywhere. Do you see anything growing up even an inch or two? Not at all. Okay? So this is that same area taken this summer where you saw the bales. Okay? So Josh is standing right here taking a picture back this way. We never used it. We didn't have a bad enough winter, so we didn't even bale graze that. Right? That's terrible soil. Like you can feed cows for about 15 minutes on that. Actually, not even that. They eat too fast. Okay, this is where we bale graze. Okay, obviously, we had an increase in biomass there. Now, all of a sudden, this ground, maybe we want to hay it because that's what every farmer wants to do. We're going to make that good of grass. Let's go hay it. Bad idea. We now are going into year 2 where we're going to bale graze that same area. And we're going to knock all of those good seed heads down into that soil. Now, I told you that the reason that a lot of us choose to get out of bale grazing is because of the residue and the weeds that come after. Is that the problems you guys have had? No? Yes? We took our 3 and 4-year-old Johnson Sioux extracts and went up there at the end of the spring, as soon as soil temperatures are warmed up enough to feed the biology, and hosed it down to the tune of like 100 gallons of bale in that area where we had that. We went back there in 3 weeks, all gone. The weeds didn't have time to get set. We were able to get the grass up through enough to push them out. Now, I'm not going to tell you that we don't have any weeds where we bale graze, but we have some competition that's going to keep them from taking over. Right? That's how you build those resilient systems. Our other business, one of our main businesses, is pheasant hunting. And these are planted birds, we raise them. A pheasant could hide out there this time of year for about 5 seconds until the hawks come and get it. But over here, we still hunt that. We're actually hunting that right now, even with a foot of snow. Right? Our cattle can graze year round. The problem is I'm too stingy because the birds pay a little bit more than the cattle do. So the cattle don't get free rein of the place until the 1st of April. But we can go and we can calve on this, and I know our cows are going to be fat and happy. We calve on corn stalks. We even left standing corn this year just for calving purposes to get better milk production from our cows. So solutions, my goal today was to introduce you to some things that if you haven't tried, this is what we've done and this is what we failed at, or this is what we've been successful. This by far, in terms of production, is the best thing that we've done. This winter, once you see something work, your mind kind of gets made up, your paradigm shifted. This winter, we're actually going to bale graze, and I'm hoping we still haven't had winter yet. It finally got cold yesterday. But we aren't even feeding hay because there's still so much to graze. but I really want to bale graze this section of land next to us that's high pH, poor quality, and with the hope that we can change it. Just want the weather to get bad enough so we have to feed. The other thing we do is a lot of cover crops. It's my daughter Alex. She's definitely grown a bit since that picture, but that's 4.5 foot triticale, grown dry land. And this is an old alfalfa field that we tried to get more production out of. And so we're planting either winter wheat into that alfalfa in the fall or triticale. And from that, we can grow in that 150 acres almost all the feed we need for our cattle for the winter. Just using the nitrogen that's available from the alfalfa.
Cory, are you feeding a forage wheat, an onless wheat, or just a regular?
So this is, in Montana, the variety is called Willow Creek winter wheat. And onless. I'm not a wheat expert, but I'll tell you, that's what we buy. It works really well. Big leaf, lots of feed for cattle. Okay, more of my playing around in the grass. One of the coolest things that really ever happened on my place was Green Cover. Of course, we get some seed from them, but they sent one of their folks out to do some sampling, and we were taking some core samples, and kind of one of the coolest stories. Pulling up some peas. So this is an OP barley mix, and we pulled some of these peas out there. And of course, this was in 23, Montana, eastern Montana, very dry. Most of their work's done around the Billings area, so they would be digging up roots and they'd find 2, 3, 4 nodules, and came over to this just to talk to us about what we were buying. We pulled this over. It's 73 nodules on one plant. And of course, a little bit later in the season, so color was down, but open those up, you just taste the nitrogen. When these things are actually working and doing their job. The picture on the far right is corn field, or this was grazing corn that I threw in after a triticale crop into what you can see is a lot of alfalfa. And just testing these mixes, right? The goal was to get cover for pheasant and feed for cattle in the spring. And we were able to do that with this with zero nitrogen. This corn was actually set about 5.5 foot tall, held all the snow. Where we are in the valley, everything blows west to east, and if the weather's going to be bad, it's coming from the north. And so we planted this on the far west edge of our ranch to try to hold that snow from leaving. And it was effective. It all stayed. Couldn't go anywhere because we left corn standing all winter. This is a little video that I'll show you real quick about what we've done with biology.
Last year we did a test we planted in the fall, and it was right when we were getting into the compost extract, and was it going to be a benefit? So we did a test where we planted a strip with our compost extract in furrow of cereal rye, and the original thought was that it probably wasn't going to do much. And now we're seeing the results of that. So we planted an entire 40 acres without it and just did one pass with our ash no-till drill, putting compost extract in furrow. And this year the results are remarkable. We have a plant, that's 8 inches was planted the exact same day, exact same time in soil right next to plants that we planted with compost extract. And we've got 4.5, 5 foot of growth on our extract plants, and we've got 8 to 10 inches of growth on our non-extract plants. To me, that was kind of the game changer. It's saying you don't put a seed in the ground unless you've got biology with it, because that biology helps that seed get established, and when that seed's established, and you got biology down there converting nutrients, that plant's gonna grow, to its maximum potential.
I know everybody saw that, and they saw that line wasn't perfectly straight, right? We didn't have GPS. This was an experiment that I did in 21, and this, as I'm learning and trying to discover what's going to be, what are the practices that we're going to continue to put money into, and what are the ones we're not going to do? This was coated seed, so we ran liquid extract in furrow. This was one, just a perfect example of something working really well. Now, what do I think contributed to the success we had here? We used the exact same drill, so the cereal rye was put in the same way next to it. One benefit, we were dry. It was a pretty dry fall, and we're not irrigating this area in the fall. It's just too hard to, my labor, I have high school kids change a pipe. They're not here in the fall, so didn't get a lot of irrigation. But what we did do, the liquid that we put in furrow, I put in, and I think at that time was 60 gallons an acre. So we at least had enough to get that seed out and opened up, and I think that's the big change. The other thing is that we have some pretty good compaction. So no-till is tough. Anybody have clay soil? It's a little bit tough to no-till into. And so for us, this was a big issue, is we just really couldn't get that seed into a good enough place for it to take off. We'll talk a little bit about our soil. So there's the picture of 3 different places on the range. So one on the left, this is roughly 2% soil organic matter. This is from that pivot that you saw in a lot of the testing. This is approximately 7. And then this is an old stream bed that goes right through the middle of our place that they manipulated about 100 years ago to put an irrigation ditch in. So the creek actually flows into the ditch and no longer comes through the ranch. And this is over 10%. All right, this is what they look like. The clay hills, so where we did the bale grazing, that's this stuff. This is all of our bottom ground. Nice, chunky, full of life. You'd seen earlier, or Dr. Beck had talked about soil organic matter and what it does for water holding capacity. And this is this was the enlightening thing for me, right, is how important is this water? So alfalfa needs, for us, for growing alfalfa, needs 6 inches of water per ton of dry matter. We grow on average in our county 5 tons an acre, okay? So you can see the math. We need 1 million gallons to produce 5 tons of hay. It's a lot of water. Missoula only gets 9 inches of rainfall between April and September. It's only 27,000 gallons for a total of a little over 217,000 gallons. Can I grow alfalfa in my climate? I'm a lot of gallons short if I'm going to rely on the rain, right? Okay, it uses 3/10 of an inch a day, so about 8,100 gallons. So I did the math for you. At 2% of organic matter, I've got 5 days between rains. At 7%, 17, 10%, 24. How likely is it that you're going to get some rain every 5 days? For us, it's not happening. Okay? Even every 17 days is pretty slim. But every 24, I would maybe bet $1 that we're going to get rain every 24 hours or every 24 days. Now, is it enough to fill my reservoir? Maybe. Just think about that capacity, 200,000 gallons of water. You guys have been, I'm not even sure I know hotel pool, and I haven't seen the one here, but typically those are about 40 to 50,000 gallons. Just think about this, put it in context. 200,000 gallons of water over an area of an acre, it's almost solid water, those top 6 inches. Right? We have land that can hold this much now. We did the water infiltration test last year. A group of students from the university were out. Actually, it was a county extension, brought a bunch of farmers out. And we took our poor soil, and the water stayed there a better part of an hour. Couldn't get it to go in. And then we went over and basically turned the faucet on our 10% soil. And we didn't even measure it because you just kept the water and it was just disappearing. Wouldn't even fill up the pipe. If there's anything, gentlemen or ladies, that you can do, it's increase your soil organic matter. Right? for us, we're choosing to go away from exporting our nutrients and going the direction of more livestock. Quit exporting our alfalfa and start feeding it on our place. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Bale grade, you go out and cut the neck wrap off for 'em?
We do. So when we set the bales in the field, like we'll set it in the summertime when it's cheap for us, because once the winter starts, it's impossible to even get up there. But we'll set it on its side, just like we would store it in a bale yard. And then we go out there one day, and do maybe 10 or 15, like 2 weeks worth at a time with a telehandler. So we lift everything up, cut it, and set it. And the big thing is, and I would tell everybody, wait until you get to your cold season before you do any cutting. Like don't remove net wrap until it's time. And that was the first year we screwed that up. Our hay was terrible. We lost a lot. And when you have net wrap on, you guys probably don't have the elk problem, but you probably do have a deer problem. Deer, we find, tend to stay out of net wrap. They just don't try to steal our hay. Elk, on the other hand, doesn't matter what you have, unless it's a 10-foot fence. They're in there. And the other thing too is we started wrapping some of our hay just for storage, right? Where we are, storage is expensive. If you're trying to put something under a shed, the county of Missoula doesn't like farmers to have any storage, so it's expensive to build with engineering. Cheaper for us just to wrap. We have hay that I opened this year that I made in 2021, and it's better than the stuff we put up this fall. Wrap, just plastic wrap bales. So we'll leave that up there and we'll feed that last. So that plastic wraps, they get sent up there and they may sit there for a year or two, or 3 or 4, till using them. Yep.
You mentioned earlier about using drones.
Yes.
Is that for applying nitrogen?
We don't typically apply any nitrogen. So that's not the business that I'm in. Now we will apply some biofertilizers, for example. Like I make a super magro, which if you want to talk about that, I'm happy to tell you.
But you're using the drones for that?
Yeah, but we're actually using the drones more now just for analysis. So we have a buddy of mine that lives on the ranch is finishing his PhD in wildlife biology. And he chose to spend some money a couple of years ago and put a drone spraying business together. And the thought was that he could spread cover crops with this drone for a lot of these remote areas of Montana. So he works with, I know he's done some work, like I think, aren't the Koch brothers based down around this area? So they have a big ranch in Montana, and I know he's flown drone covering seed and spraying weeds on their place. And that was the idea is, for wildlife management, what are some of the tools we can use? So he bought a drone, and we use it now where we're using the sensor technology to tell us biomass. We're using it to tell us where weeds are. And not so much for applying things, but just giving us the information that we need to make some management decisions. Now, I'm really excited to hear what Russell's doing because Russell Hendricks putting a lot of stuff down, I believe, with drones and specific targeted fertilizer applications. Are we going to go that direction? We might, but our goal is to try to do this with as little expense as possible. Drones are expensive, and it's not so much expensive to acquire, but I watched, this is a true story, I was in the Big Hole, went out, this guy was spraying algae, I think an algae crop on a hayfield. We're driving up to visit this farmer, and the guy spraying just waxed the power line. Destroyed his drone, destroyed the power line, so the ranch was out. And it's not like it's easy to get the power company out there to put a new power line up. They were out of power for 2 or 3 days. I don't know what it cost that guy, but I think it cost him more than his little drone operation was worth. So flying in town is a little bit dangerous. Yes?
Talk a little bit about Johnson Sioux and compost and extract. What is the feedstock that you use? Is that municipal waste?
No. So and I'll clarify that. So first year we did some testing, found that we had some PFAS in this compost that I didn't want. So in 2022 forward, we were making all of our own. All right, so our main feedstocks, okay, are cottonwood chips. So the trees that you see around our place are all cottonwoods. I think Simeon, I don't know if he's in here, but he was here. Out to our place. This year we had a huge windstorm. Took down every tree on ours, the neighbors. I mean, football fields of trees that people had hauled in to get cleaned up. And so we took all that away. So we've now got enough biomass, or at least carbon, I don't know, 10, 15 years of applying at this level. Now my problem is not enough manure. But we're fortunate, we're lucky in Missoula, we have a lot of breweries. So Big Sky Brewing, for example. We go and pick up all their brewers' waste now, and that's high nitrogen. So what's left over from that process, those seed heads, are still high nitrogen. They lost the sugar, but good nitrogen. So we'll use that, and then of course clippings. So we mow our sod field, so we get our green that way. And so we're making compost every day. So that's our main part. We are. Yep. Yeah, we do everything. There comes a point when you try to justify the cost. All right. I have plugged my drill really every time I've ever tried to use it. Meaning the filtering system that I used was poor, added too much fish, and all of a sudden we got an outbreak of bacteria, we get sticky, and it just doesn't work. So coating the seed is my insurance policy. It's cheap, it's easy, and really my kids can do it. It's a job that they like and can do. After that, if I get more on in furrow, that's even better. But that's the main process.
When you're applying the liquid extract, do you have any idea how many pounds of compost an acre that represents?
So for us, the recipe I started with was 2 pounds an acre when we're making liquid. I've since upped it. I mean, there's waste, right? And the problem, it's like marketing. 50% of the money you spend on marketing is waste. The problem is you don't know what 50%. And so I look at biological applications this way too. Yeah, we can probably get away with a little less, but do I want to be doing this again because it wasn't enough? And so for me, that's the way I look at it. If we can make it cheap, and making compost on our operation, we do it for about $2 a ton. That's cheap. Yes?
I have two questions, if you don't mind, and they both involve around your pheasant operation.
Yeah.
You mentioned putting pheasants in a chicken tractor, and my question was, is that your breeding stock, or how do you do flight conditioning if you're peepers? Explain how that would work in maybe a small chicken tractor, or even one with a big roof. So
we don't do that out in the summertime. So our flight pens are separate. These were what we put out on our sod field was our chicks. So we were week 6 to week 14, roughly that size. So they're flying, but they're not developing their wings and their muscles to that point yet. 20 weeks, everything's in a flight pen.
And then on the bale grazing side of things, I think I might answer my own question here. It's like to repair damaged land, but if you're gonna hide for my operation, we, of course, apples and oranges here in Kansas, but we plant a winter stockpile, a period sensitive sedan. Hides a lot of birds. You can graze it, move on, and still put birds in it.
Yep.
Can you explain the bale grazing a little bit more? I guess because I'm interested in that, but
bale grazing is in my opinion, is one of the best ways to get nutrients into your soil. When we bale graze, these cows are on that bale and they're there for 24 to 48 hours and they don't leave but to get water. So they're going to go to the bathroom 4 to 6 times, right? Urinate and go poop. And when you put it confined like that where the food source is, then they lay on it all night, right? So they're generating heat. They're putting this biology into that hay, and then that's soaking down into the soil underneath, right? So this is a huge concentration. If you run cattle and you have a corral, and your cattle come in for branding or whatever you're doing for a period of time, and they're in there for, let's say, 2 or 3 days, and then they're gone all summer, your weed production in that corral is usually huge, right? You could feed 1,000 goats in that corral, right? So you're doing the exact same thing, but you're doing it in a more controlled way. Put them on.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but like earlier today, what struck me is exporting our nutrients. So
Yeah.
it pays cheaper, you buying hay and bringing it in on the land, or you swapping and baling that and then just keeping it there.
So the math, right? This is where kind of why I'm deciding to get out of the hay business. Okay, we sell small square alfalfa grass mix hay bales for $364 a ton. Okay, I can buy big squares, okay, delivered to my place for $85 a ton. Okay, in my sense, you know, the economics are not perfect because we're selling small squares for such a high price. The problem is those small squares, when you start figuring in the cost and all the people it takes to move them and get them out, it's more beneficial for me when I factor in what the cost of fertilizer are, how bad it's hurting my land in the long term, to get out of that small square business. It's not a lot, right? We're only talking a few % difference. But if I can run cattle and I can do some other things to generate revenue, like now all of a sudden have more feed or more cover for pheasants, well, now all of a sudden the picture gets a lot rosier and it makes sense to get out of the hay business.
Okay, we've got time for one more question.
Okay.
Your compost all outside?
So what was that?
Make your compost all outside?
We do. Yeah, everything's outside. It goes through the winter. It freezes, it cools, it thaws. So our Johnson Sioux, so I keep 9. A couple people have been to our place, but I keep 9 inside of a insulated Connex now that's heated and keeps it controlled so we have something to apply in the spring. I'm here all week, so if you guys have other questions, come talk to me.
Thank you, Cory.
Yep.